Well, Hamas has fired more rockets from Gaza into southern Israel. This was the scene in the city of Ashkelon after rockets struck some areas. There are no reports of casualties. We'll go now to Al Jazeera's Charles Stratford, who's in Sderot, in southern Israel. And so, Charles, just give us an update on the situation there and the movements by Israeli military overnight.
Well, we've just had another attempted another attack of missiles or rockets fired from the Gaza Strip in the last 15 or 20 minutes ago. They were intercepted by the so-called Iron Dome defence system just over our heads, actually. And it's been like that on and off all day here in Sderot. There was a similar attack this morning whereby 4 missiles actually got through, managing to penetrate or avoid the defence system, one landing on a railway line, another on a religious school. No casualties involved in any of these attacks. We've seen a lot more tank movement, a lot more military movement in the last day or so. A large, what sounded like an impact there, actually. That did actually sound possibly like incoming, but we can't confirm that. So just going back to troop movement and military hardware, we've seen, hundreds of tanks, APCs, various other military hardware that have moved into this area over the last few days. Interestingly, today and yesterday, we're beginning to see those pieces of equipment being moved away into areas that we cannot get to because that is a military, closed military zone. Now, whether this indeed is an indication of preparations for an eventual ground invasion into Gaza, we can't confirm, but it wouldn't be inconceivable that they were being moved, if that was the case, into some more forward operating position. Meanwhile, the Israeli army has said that Palestinian fighters targeted a tank in the northern Gaza Strip, an Israeli tank. At least 5 soldiers, Israeli soldiers, injured in that attack, 2 critically. In terms of civilians in this area, as you can see, the streets behind me are pretty much empty. Very few people still remaining in these areas, these towns very close to the border. We're around 3 kilometres from the Gaza border here in Sderot. But yeah, all eyes are on what could happen, as many people are speculating, in the next few hours. Just with respect to that corridor that I reported, or we were reporting on earlier today, that has now expired. It was a duration between 10 a.m. and 4 a.m. that the Israeli military said that they were going to give Gazans wanting to flee that northern section of the Gaza Strip. They promised, they said that they would not shell those 2 highways. We've also heard the reports that we can't verify, though, that shelling of the southern regions of the Gaza Strip is ongoing. But as I say, that window that was offered by the Israeli army this morning has now expired. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting as to what happens in the next few hours, and very terrifying, of course, for hundreds of thousands, if not more, Palestinians who still remain in that northern section of the Gaza Strip.
Charles, talking about the build-up of military hardware, we're seeing pictures of that, of tanks and so forth in the area. What about infantry units? Are you seeing any evidence of that? Because it's going to need people on foot to go into Gaza.
Well, we have seen vast amounts of soldiers in the area as well. We know that the Israeli army has said that at least 300,000 reservists are going to be called in potentially for any fight. And of course, that's in addition to the regular army. We've seen various units, some of which we understand could well be, special operatives. It's interesting to see the different vehicles that are being driven around this zone as well. A lot of, if you like, civilian, or seemingly, on the surface at least, civilian vehicles with a lot of antennas, a lot of radio antennas, sort of low, trying to keep a low footprint. But in the same time, as I say, there are thousands of troops that we've seen. We spoke to a few yesterday in the kibbutz of Biri, one of those kibbutz that was attacked, infiltrated by Hamas fighters. At least 108 Israeli civilians killed in that kibbutz. And the soldiers we spoke to were very buoyed, very determined, and morale was high. They said, look, we're ready to go in and we will win. We've also seen, yes, truckloads of soldiers being brought into various areas or passing areas where we are allowed to be, and as I say, going into this zone, this military exclusion zone that we understand or we know is even closer to the Gaza Strip. But yeah, as to whether this is this is before that expected land invasion, that remains to be seen. But all evidence would suggest that that could well be the case.
And Charles, what about residents there? What are you hearing from them? I've been reading about how the mayor of Sderot was calling on the Prime Minister to evacuate residents to areas outside the immediate range of rockets.
Well, today we've been coming here pretty much every day for the last near on week, and it is safe to say that today is the emptiest that we've seen it. Now, that could be as a result of it being Shabbat, obviously the Jewish weekend, the Jewish holy day. So just normally there's much fewer people on the streets anyway. But you know, it wouldn't be inconceivable to think that there are far less people here than there were even 2-3 days ago. The few people that we have spoken to in recent days have said, look, I've got nowhere else to go. Where am I supposed to go? One man actually said to us that he said, no, on the contrary, now is the time to stay. I'm determined to stay. I will not be moved from here. I mean, of course, this town, Sderot, has almost got mythical status in Israel, and anybody that follows the developments of this conflict, of the problems that exist here in Israel, Palestine, everybody knows where this town is because it is hit so regularly by missiles, by rockets fired out of Gaza. But seemingly, despite obviously the intensity of this attack that happened last week, October the 7th, despite the fact that this place suffered an infiltration, I mean, the police station just down the road here is now completely destroyed. That was taken over by, we understand, at least 10 Hamas fighters. At least 10 bodies were found when we understand an airstrike destroyed it by the Israeli Air Force. As I say, it's still very few people here at all. And I think it's fair to say that that's a similar scenario right the way down the strip in Israeli villages and kibbutzes close to Gaza.
All right, Charles, leave it there for the moment. Speak to you a bit later as the day goes on, the afternoon wears on. Charles Stratford there from Sderot, thank you.